And then reflection. This is my home country in Switzerland, but this idea that you can actually warp space, you can manipulate space through the use of reflection. Alguna was same client, develops cities rather than building. Kindly enough, he gave us another concert hall to do in Alguna. We were asked to essentially come up with a brief for a cultural center, but we wanted to do something that would connect all the different old Guna and new Guna and all of these different areas, so that people, when they're driving around or walking around or bicycling around, will come by this element and by this cultural element. We want to come with our Western mentality of this is what a concert hall should look like, and we really wanted to do something that felt uniquely Egyptian and yet was not mimicking Egyptian architecture. This notion of scale and the scale of the sculptures and the scale of the colonnades that they have in Luxor is quite something, and we wanted to play, and the simplicity of it all. I mean, if you think of the pyramid, the simplicity of their architecture is something that we played with. And the other thing that was interesting is that the arch is a Moorish invention, a typology that's been used over the centuries, and it's something, again, that we wanted to play with. We put the building of 30,000 square meter of a body of water, which is all gravity fed, so no pumps, because we are in Guna, the city of water. And then essentially we covered the concert hall in yellow, the conference center in blue, and the outdoor film festival area. And then we created these colonnades around the building. And that was simply to create two things: to create sunshade and protect the buildings from the strong winds of Guna, but also to be able to build this in 3 different phases. Phase 1 being the colonnade, phase 2 being the concert hall, and phase 3 being the conference center. But this idea that it becomes a public square that can be used all the time for festivals and outside of for weddings, for you name it. So it had to be something that was usable and flexible and also have the high views of culture and music. We were appointed in January and we had to complete phase 1 by September, so it was incredibly quick. So we had to design the concert hall, the conference center, and the colonnades all and build it at the same time. But we thought, how can we reinvent the colonnade? And what we did is a very simple move of taking columns and just staggering them and then arranging them to just find a new typology for these arches. And then we played with the scale, and we played with the scale of Egypt, and we amplified them to 20 meters and 18 meters, etc., and giving this sense of, this uniquely Egyptian scale. But we were also very keen that it shouldn't be too monumental. It should have a softness. It should, feel that it comes from the sand, from the area. And so we created this interior, and you can see in the middle view, once you stagger the arches, it creates a very complex geometry. And so we had to come up with geometry that would be able to be built and yet absolutely flawless at the top. You can see how we developed it. This is on site. So these are the old GRC, glass reinforced concrete panels that we installed. You can see here the scale. That's me next to one of these panels. And they did an absolutely beautiful job of building them with absolute flawless connection in between. But this softness of sand and feeling that you are in, it's like a cave in the middle of the desert. This is the plan. So the 30,000 square meter reflecting pool around it. One of the reasons we chose this site was that it was next to the Nubian village, which is where a lot of the workers live. And actually, I think it's one of the prettiest villages in all of Guna. More importantly, it was next to this body of water, and we wanted to take the water, flow it through our building, through our plazas, and then reject it again without the use of any kind of pumps, and sort of allowing it all to be gravity fed. These are the 3 phases. So you can see phase 1 completed, phase 2 now the concert hall, which I'm going to take you into. So we designed the plazas essentially to receive these future buildings, and that they can be built easily once they're ready to build it. And these are the early renderings. This is a concert hall building. We were using a local Egyptian stone. They love concrete, and we were trying desperately not to use concrete. And so we found an Egyptian stone that if we CNC'd it was actually more cost effective than concrete. And that was a great way to be slightly more environmental. And now the concert hall. The concert hall was actually the completely opposite elements. The client wanted a 125-piece orchestra so that they could play Aida and some big pieces in there. but only an audience of 600. And when you have a 125-piece orchestra, you usually have an audience of 2,000 because it just doesn't make sense. So most large concert halls have large audiences. And so when you design a concert hall, you start with a stage, and you design the stage, and you place your instrument, your musicians on it, and you size the stage, and then you start building the audience around it. And again, like Sharoon, I wanted to, and like Andermatt, I wanted to wrap the audience around the orchestra, so you have this very intimate connection. And because 600 is not a big audience, we wanted everybody to see each other and sort of feel part of the same element. And then we put the acoustic reflector above the orchestra, as you need to. And then the problem was that the acoustic box, the shoe box that worked so well for acoustics, 43 by 20 by 24, would have totally overwhelmed the audience. And it would have been like sitting in an IKEA box while this orchestra was going on. So it just didn't feel right. And so our solution was to create what we call the Intimacy Dome. Intimacy Dome is completely acoustically transparent, but visually solid, and it allows light and sound to go through. But more importantly, it compresses the space into a much more intimate space that allows this relationship between the orchestra and the audience to occur without the feeling that you're in this big dark box. And then we place the acoustic box around it, and this is where you put all the speakers and the reflectors and the curtains and all of the things that you want to do for variable acoustics that usually look quite ugly in a concert hall. And this is the reflected ceiling plan, but this was really inspired from this, the mountains behind Guna, and this notion of being within the sand, within the mountains, and compressed by the space, and light shafts being able to come through and light up the stage. And this was our very first rendering, where we imagined this idea of being compressed by the space. Obviously, it didn't work because we did it out of wood, and the acoustician had a heart attack. But then we moved on and started looking at it, how we could resolve the same idea with a mesh, a transparent mesh, and hanging all of this, and allowing the light, these shafts of light to come into the space, and this sort of very intimate relationship between musicians and audience. This is the Nuben village and the relationship with the building. They have one of the best views of the building. And this idea of the reflection and how it really makes it a sort of a space for Guna, this is the tallest building in Guna. There's a height limit of 12 meters in Guna, and this is sort of the cultural space, the one that was allowed to go higher, but also really plays with this idea that Guna is a city of water, and these reflections really add to the lighting and to the effect of the space. And this is how they use it. So this was the film festival. They have the annual World Championship of squash there every year. They have ginormous weddings and all sorts of events that happen there. So they are actively using it all year round, currently as Festival Plaza. And then as the concert hall gets built, they'll use the other plaza, and eventually the conference center will get built.